We have an incredible panel here to speak about women, power, empowerment, passion, and purpose. I first want to introduce, who's no stranger to some of you here in the fashion crowd, one of the most exciting designers working today, representing a new guard of designers who are offering affordable luxury to today's modern woman. Named to Forbes 30 under 30, when she was under 30, she is the co-founder of Cushnie. Women's Wear Daily, which yesterday reviewed her show, which she had here yesterday, called the show absolutely sensual. And I ran into a fellow journalist as I was going from show to show, and I asked him, which, as many of you know, is sort of par for the course as to what you do during Fashion Week, which is asking, how was the show? Seen any good shows? And he called the show I got it, you get it, right? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Carly Cushnie. Actor, director, author, activist. Her book, The Ones Who Don't Stay, was a New York Times bestseller. Known as a director and actor for films like Entre Nos, she's been a passionate voice at the front lines of what is happening with immigrants. She's been a passionate voice on behalf of immigrants. And she's an accomplished entertainer and artist who's been noted at every major film festival for her work. Please help me welcome Paula Mendoza. For 8 years, she did what has to be truly one of the hardest jobs in fashion, dressing the First Lady of the United States as her stylist and wardrobe advisor. And it should be noted, this wasn't just any First Lady when it came to fashion, but she will go down in history as perhaps one of 2 First Ladies who used the power of fashion to uplift and amplify all of our lives and to uplift the fashion industry. She is now the creative consultant for Cushnie. Please help me welcome Meredith Koop. Ladies, you are exemplary in your passion and your purpose and using that to craft creative, enriching lives and to inspire us all. The first thing I want to ask is, how do you find your true passion or purpose? Paula, perhaps we can start with you.
Yes, thank you for having me, and I'm very honored to be here with everyone. And just in case, my son is in that corner on the iPad, that's the babysitter, so he might meander onto the stage.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I have a question for him.
Exactly. So how did I find my purpose? I think at the end of the day, since the beginning of 2016 to where we are at this moment, and not to get political, but I'm going to get political right from the beginning.
Go right ahead.
Obviously, these 2 years have been very, very difficult for the immigrant community in particular, but for many communities in this country. And so previous to Trump being elected, I was working in film and writing books, all with social justice themes and slants, and a very big believer in the power of art. After the election, the very next day, I had a moment of questioning my faith and my belief in this thing that I had been doing my entire life, which was being an artist. My question to myself was, what did art matter in this moment? When people were going to be deported to their deaths, when the criminal justice reform system, the advances that we had made within the criminal justice reform system were going to be pretty much I don't want to say abolished, but that we were going to take many steps back. The environment was going to be decimated. What did art really matter when we were facing such dire circumstances? And I spent the next 2 days talking with artists. I called every artist that I had in my phone book, and I just asked the question, what does art matter now? And some of us talked for hours, and we asked with more and more questions, and we got into impassioned debates. And at the end of those 2 days, where I literally spoke from 8 in the morning till 8 at night with close to 200 artists, I came away realizing and having my faith restored in the actual power and the need and the necessity of art, the voice of art, and how critical it is that we as artists in this room and beyond continue to use our voice in order to make sure that the truth is being told, in order to tell the stories of communities that are under attack, in order to imagine the worlds that we actually the public doesn't even know that exists. And more importantly, I think at the end of the day is that I think that artists and art have the power to inspire people to love, when in this world it's so easy to actually hate. And so I think that moment was a crystallization of my purpose of having doubt in what I had been doing, and then having it fully restored in the past 2 years. That's what I've been doing. I've been using art at the center of politics and really moving beyond what I normally did pre-Donald Trump into spaces and at the intersections of places that I didn't really explore before.
Thank you. Meredith, what is your purpose and how did you find it? And it doesn't mean it doesn't change, right?
Yeah, I think it's ever evolving. That was beautiful, everything you said. I feel so grateful to be here. I think purpose is ever evolving, and you can change as you grow and change yourself. I really fell into this role in a lot of ways with Michelle, which is what people sort of cling on to when they meet me, and because it's something that everyone can identify with. Everyone feels this connection to her. But my purpose in that moment, although I never expected it, was to serve this person in a way that I felt like was important to the country. And like you're talking about inspiring joy versus inspiring divisiveness or negativity, hatred. I felt like that was my purpose in that moment. But of course now I'm redefining my purpose and what I truly want to do, who I truly want to be, and how to make sure the way that I'm financially supporting myself is in line with my values. That's what I'm really trying to achieve. I do styling, I do consulting, I'm working on a television show. Yes, I work with Kuyana. I do a variety of different things, so I'm trying to align myself with people and projects that make sense for my values.
Thank you. We want to come back to that later, too. Carly, for you, how is passion expressed in what you do and your purpose?
Being a designer is always something that I had wanted to do. From a young child, from growing up through high school, all my work, all my art projects were very much geared towards becoming a designer, and I think it's something that I've always known about myself, and that's something that I wanted to create. But that feeling very much shifts when you're actually producing something and you have a customer who's buying it, and parting with their hard-earned money for something that you created. And so, for me, I've always thought about my purpose in terms of creating something that's beautiful but functional, and something that my customer will love. And for me, it's always about creating something for them, putting my customers' needs first, and it not being about ego, about concept, about fashion for just fashion's sake, or just creating beautiful things that no one can wear. It's really about the woman herself.
Thank you. As women, everyone sitting up here, you are very accomplished, and we often focus, we meaning the observers, focus on what's glamorous and wonderful about what you do, and we'd love to be in your place. But in fact, there are a lot of obstacles. So talk a little bit about what, please, some of the obstacles have been for you, and how do you overcome them? Like, what are a couple of tools in your toolbox that you've used to overcome these obstacles? Who wants to start off? Meredith? You're it.
Hey. Wow, it's an interesting question. For me personally, a lot of my obstacles are internal, to be totally honest. My own fears, my own insecurities, my own trepidations. I dealt with depression from a young age, so that's always been an obstacle for me, something I live with daily. And that affects my work. I mean, I don't see a clear line between personal and professional. To me, it's the same thing. So I can't talk about one without talking about the other. So really for me, like, I have a personal care regimen that I have to do, because if I don't do it, I can't work. Like, I can't function. So that's sort of, it's really black and white for me. Like, I have to go to therapy. I have to take a medication. I have to do a bunch of different things. I have to work out. I have to, there's a long list of things I have to do so that I can show up for life. And that's really as simple as it can get, but also as complicated as it can be.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because we still are in the midst of a culture where we don't share enough about the power of getting professional help or just seeking help generally. And I was just sort of like doing one of those walking from the living room to the refrigerator things today, and saw this basketball star on TV, and he's in college, he plays for Marquette. He drops 50 points a game, and he's 19 years old. And he started talking about the fact that he started going to therapy a couple years ago. And I think, as a man and as a young black man, I thought it was incredibly powerful. He's in this position where, every 14-year-old little boy is hanging on to his every word. I think it was very empowering, as it is, with you today here on this stage, to share that. So
and I think for me, it's, I work in fashion. Okay, a lot of people in fashion focus on the exterior, and sure, that's a big part of it, and there's commerce and there's art, but all of that comes from people. Like, everything is from people, from humans, from our souls, from our hearts. The clothing that you design, to the people that make that clothing, to the people that wear that clothing. So the humanity is not lost, and I think fashion tries to hide it. And that's what frustrates me about the industry, is that I see a lot that fashion tries to push aside the humanity of it. And for me, like, there is no line. It's all the same.
All the same. Carly, what do you use? What are some of the things in your toolbox that you use to and have used to get over those obstacles, which are inevitable?
There's always going to be inevitable obstacles, especially with running a business. And for me, I've had my business now for 10 years, and I started it very young, and I think at the time that was to a benefit for me, because I think being naive and probably a little bit too bold was probably helpful in having the guts to really, start a line. I think when you've been in the industry for a while and you've seen a lot of things, I think it takes a lot more guts later on in life to say, okay, I'm going to step out on my own and really do this. So there are so many times that there's been obstacles where it was retailers saying no or not interested, or will watch for a season, and they would say that season after season, and or just not being able to fund something, worried about whether you're going to be able to fund a show, or just keep up with the cash flow, or keep up with the demands of a store. And that's, in a way, that's a benefit, but you can't always follow through. So it's, but I think for me, it's been about surrounding myself with having a really, really great team. Some of my key employees have been with me for a really long time. And they've been, really great. I think we've been a great support system for each other, especially when we've been through obstacles as a company and been able to somehow work through them together as a team. You really come to rely on these people as family, and for me, that's an atmosphere that I really, wanted to create at work, that people feel that they can come to me with issues that they're having, whether at work or personally, and we can work on it as a team.
So the team aspect's important. Paula, how do you overcome obstacles, and what's worked for you? What do you recommend?
I think it's the same, the idea of community, of the work that I'm doing, whether it's writing or film or activism, is not a solo endeavor. It's a collaborative world. And all those three worlds are filled with a lot of rejection. From film, you're constantly being told, no, that's not good enough, or no, or how about this, or no, budget's too high, but whatever. Books, you're writing book proposals and publishers are rejecting you. In activism, there is a form of rejection in the sense of that the world that one wants to create is being rejected, or something physically is happening against the communities that you are trying to work with. So I think that rejection is better served and better dealt with when it's in community. And I think the important thing is to discuss and talk about that rejection in whoever and whatever community you have, and also recognize when you don't have community. And I think that that's critically important too, because if you don't have community, it's not necessarily something, because there's been times in my life where I didn't have the community that I wanted, and so I went out and I created and I searched for it. And I think that that's important as well.
For me, I summarize it in people, prayer, and action. And so the idea of the team, I think, is extremely important for me. That's the people. When I've been into some very difficult places, I think about leaning on people I know who are friends, or reaching out to people is very, very helpful. And the default place tends to be you tend to want to withdraw, right? And that's such the wrong thing to do. That's the moment when you feel like you want to withdraw, is the moment to reach out. And that's extremely helpful. And then also taking action. I think, again, you have this feeling when you get to a really difficult place that you really just don't want to do anything. You want to curl up in bed, or have a tub of ice cream in front of your television. But really the thing to do is to take some action and think about that. What has been I want to ask all of you, what has been a defining moment in your career? If you can just tell us about one or two of them, because there may be quite a few. But Paula, what would you say?
Well, one of the most recent moments, I'm going to assume that most of us in this room have heard at one point in time about the migrant caravan that was rushing the borders of the United States previous to the midterm elections. And so I was watching that news happen and watching how the president was using that as very much political football for the midterm elections. And I just could not sit back and not do anything. So I got on a plane and I went down to the caravan, and I was with the caravan from November 1st on and off through the middle of December. And I was documenting the caravan. And the purpose there was to document the truth, to tell the stories of the mothers and the children that were on the caravan, and to do it in a rapid response way, and that was on social media, to try and change the narrative, to shift the narrative, or to add complexity to the narrative. That I've been to a lot of places in my life. I've seen a lot of really hard things. I've seen a lot. But the caravan was actually some of the most difficult human tragedy that I had ever seen unfold. And the reason why I've thought about that a lot, it was because it was utter and complete chaos. It was 7,000 people without a plan, without anywhere to go, with children and mothers, hungry, tired, thirsty, out in the elements, and there was no way forward. There was no clear indication of where they were going. They knew that they needed to get north, but they didn't necessarily know how to get there, and there was no one in control. And so it was complete chaos. And so to me, that was a moment of a particular moment in my career, though I don't necessarily think of it that way, in the sense that in the swarm of chaos, how can we as individuals contribute? What is it that we can do as individuals? And I found strength and power in that, and to be one person amongst 7,000 trying to do something. Whether there was a solution or not, or affected it or it didn't, I don't think is important than just being there and showing up. And I think ultimately that is also the case for the past few years of people that have gotten involved politically, and even before, because obviously the political moment, this moment is connected to all of the political moments before it. But how is it that we get involved, and how is it that we show up? And seeing individuals show up, we've seen positive change or positive effort in the past 2.5 years with that.
Okay, thank you. Carly, a defining moment in your career?
Yeah, I think for me, I've been lucky enough to dress some really incredible people, and that's, it's amazing a feeling every single time it happens, because for the most part you generally don't know if it's going to happen or not, because it's like you learn something, or even if you make something custom, it's not 100% that it's going to work out. But in addition to that, I think probably one of the most special moments for me personally was seeing a stranger for the first time, on just a random person who had purchased.
Actually paid for that
Yes.
baby.
And so for me, that meant, and it was just so exciting, and it's just, it catches you off guard, and it means so much. So I think for me, that was a defining moment, that someone went into a store and thought that was great and decided to purchase that. So
Yeah, Meredith.
That's very cool. Such an interesting phrase, defining moment. Okay, what's my big defining moment? There's so many. I mean, I think I'm just going to kind of piggyback on both of you, but I think it's to see something that you did in front of other people, and to see people appreciate it or react to it those have been big moments for me, and also like just interesting moments, because it's interesting to see what people react to and how they react to it. I also think like the times when I've personally realized that something bigger is at play, like it's about being of service, or it's about something bigger than just, like you'd mentioned ego before, like when you're really coming from a place of trying to be of service versus satisfying my own ego, which can happen often, like especially when it comes to clothing. It's like, I want this to happen. Those have been great moments. And of course, like being in the White House, like it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Like I can't even tell you like what it is. I don't understand it still. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it.
So while we're on the subject, all right, tell us a little, we're going to push you a bit. Tell us a little bit about that. Dressing.
What do you want to know?
Oh. Okay, you are, by the way, going to get a chance to ask some questions.
I love a
later.
question.
But
answer,
so, yes,
period.
Exactly. But right now, too, we're going to ask you a little bit about one of the things I've loved about what you've been doing, in addition to those fierce over-the-knee boots that you put her in for her book tour, is you've been so discreet. You have through the year, you're only now coming out, to speak.
Yeah, I think I've been maybe
openly.
too discreet. I don't know. I'm not sure.
What do we think? Too discreet, or that's really good discreet? I don't know.
Too discreet. Yeah, that's
Takes
been
a lot of discipline.
Yeah, it does, and it's weird. The whole thing is bizarre. I kind of. It's easy to look back on something and sort of say, oh, I should have done this. It's harder in the moment, and I always just really wanted to be respectful. Like I just wanted to be respectful. And the last thing, that first year, and people don't even remember this. You don't remember You do not remember, okay? I remember. And they remember, okay. Before,
So is there a memoir coming? I just interrupted.
perhaps, but it wouldn't be what you wanted it to be. Okay, so, but before they were, I want to say they were elected, but before he was elected, and that first year, there was a lot of criticism, there was a lot of negativity. I mean, there still is, but at that time, it was so heightened, and it was so, gosh, things come ebb and flow, don't they? Like,
Do you mean, and there was a lot of criticism. Are you referring to generally or
just
to the
generally,
look?
the look. I mean, it's all encapsulated in one. It was like, who is this black woman?
In a khaki pantsuit.
Who is she? Like, we don't like it. We don't like her eyebrows. We don't like her expression. We don't like what she's wearing. We don't like her body. We don't like the, and it's just like, what? Like, huh? So I always felt like I never wanted to do anything to add any fuel to that fire. And perhaps at some point I should have let that go by the wayside or something, but I just never wanted to be the cause of any negativity to come on to that family, to that administration.
That is so admirable, and it's also, that's like so much pressure.
Yes. And I'm not the center of the universe, and it's not like anything I would have done would have, collapsed the walls of the house, but it just felt like, it's not, this isn't about me. Like, it really wasn't about me, and when you see the reaction that people have to these people, right? They're people, like, they're not perfect, but they're these glorious people, and you realize it's just so much bigger. Like, it's so much about, seeing a young person especially, I mean, it's so beautiful to see the hope that brings, and that's so much bigger than any article I could get or any check I could get. Like, it's just, now it's different because I'm like, yeah, I need the check. But at the time, I had a very clear purpose, a very clear and focused purpose.
Well, in that purpose, like I said, you're like in this enviable position in many ways, but there's also a whole lot of pressure. As a woman who's accomplished and who is keeping it together, I read something where you said, yes, where you said, I think I'll style probably for another year, and then I'm going to do something else. Yeah. And it was all like, no, Meredith.
I don't want to do this anymore. No, I just don't want to be, I don't want to be styling. It's not even, Michelle, that's a different category. I'm not even talking about that. Other people doing it as a profession, I just want to, there are lots of other things I want to do. And for me, I just know it's not my, when you just feel something, it's like, this is not my calling right now. I have something else I need to do. I don't know, I know pieces of what it might be, and I'm moving towards creating this series that will hopefully be coming soon to your laptops or whatever, televisions if you still have one. And there's other business ideas that I'm playing around with, but those just feel more real to me, and those feel like the direction I want to go in. And I also, I'm so inspired by other people and other women that I'm constantly having ideas about the direction I want to go.
Okay, thank you. Paola, you are a mother, and you're talking about passion, and we're speaking about Meredith saying that she probably will be pivoting, and is already pivoting. Do you lose your passion or change? I say lose it, but do you change your passion when you become a mother? Carly wants to know. How do you incorporate that into what is for many of us such a busy life?
Well, the first thing is what works for one doesn't work for all, and everyone figures out their way to be a mom, and when you're balancing those things, and it's okay to be totally stressed out at all times. but it's beautiful and amazing. My passion, did it change? Well, I think I
It's a
became
book title, by the way. We're all going to buy it.
I became much more focused, and I think that's the beauty of having a child, is that where before I had however much time, 6 hours to do this thing that I needed to do, now I have 2.5 hours. And so the diddle-daddling, wasting time just goes by the wayside because I have 2.5 hours to get the thing done, and then I got to go be with my son. And it's made me much more focused. It's allowed me to say, no, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not where my passion and my life and my love is at this moment, because I want to do this, and this is what's going to fulfill me, and this is what's critical for me. This is the reason why I'm not spending time with my son. So is this the thing that I want to be doing when I'm not with my son? And that, when you ask yourself that, when I ask myself that, then it becomes very clear around what I should be doing and what I should not be doing. And I think it's also important that changes, right? Like when Mateo was born, I was writing, and I was writing for the first 2.5 years of his life, so it was very, very easy to balance writing. I shouldn't say very easy. It was much easier to balance writing than when he was a newborn. Now I'm traveling, I'm doing all kinds of stuff, and I flew on a red eye last night from LA to get here today, to spend time with Mateo, to then come to this panel, and I'm bringing him here, right? So it's just like
Wow.
the balance of, and figuring out what's important.
Thank you. Carly, how does that sound to you? What are you going to do?
It'll be interesting. I'm not sure. I'll be figuring it out as I go along. And I think she will be coming to work with me a lot.
Oh, we caught that.
I also want to be able to create that environment at work for, for my employees, where it's more of a comfortable atmosphere where they can do that as well. It's mainly an office full of women. Everyone is pretty young, but there's only one other woman who has kids. And she, said to me the other day when her nanny needed a day off, and she wanted to come in with her son, and I said, you just want to work from home, it's no big deal. And she's like, no, I want to come in, and there's some things I need to do. And it was great, her son was just chilling in her office while she was, doing her thing, and and I think we always manage to make it work. And my team are very excited to have a new baby in the office. We have a couple of puppies, so I know it's gonna definitely be a juggle, and a lot to balance. I also, with doing 4 collections a year, at the end of last year, I started doing bridal as well. So, I was just, I just thought I'd add
You
that
didn't
one.
have enough to do.
Yeah. So just adding her in on top of that, I think once you start to get into the routine of like you said, and I think it will just make me more focused, and this is what I need to do, and I need to leave by a certain time, and that's what it's gonna have to be. It's dividing and conquering and making decisions of where I need to be, and also just really empowering my team to be able to do what I know they can do without me.
That's wonderful, and congratulations, by the way. So I'm very happy to hear that. So it will be the Carly Cushnie way. It will be Paola's way. It won't be the Marissa Meyer way, if any of you remember that. But anyway, to be looked up if you don't remember. So, Carly, you have said that you create clothes, or it's been said of you. You've said it, right? That you create clothes for the self-confident woman. And a lot of times we as women, we talk about faking it till you make it. We talk about I look successful, but I don't feel successful. And, all of that. Sometimes it's so hard. And so is there room in your design world for making women feel confident who perhaps don't feel
I think
confident?
it's really about that. It's about making someone feel confident through clothing because, you know, at the end of the day, your clothing speaks for you before you speak yourself. And I think that if you feel comfortable, if you feel like you look good, you automatically feel more confident. You feel like, okay, I look good, I can go do this, whatever it is I need to do, whether it's, you know, whether it's a job interview or whether it's, you know, dealing with other moms picking your kid up from school, you know. So I think it's, you know, I think clothing can be very communicative, and I think that, and for me, I always, you know, I always think about the female body and really fit because my clothes are so clean that, you know, the fit is really the most important thing. And so if you feel that the fit is good and it's something that you can rely on and you're not fidgeting all night, and I think then you do feel confident because you know you look great, and that's one less thing that you have to worry about.
Great, thank you. Paula, you had said that one of the ways that we as women should empower ourselves is to be gentle with ourselves. Tell us a bit more about that, because sometimes we take care of everyone and forget to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, welcome to motherhood. I think, you know, as often is the case, the things that we say are often reminders to ourselves. So that I say to myself often, which is be gentle to myself, because I am an artist and there are things that I want to do as an artist and want to accomplish, and I feel I specifically work in a space that is complex in the sense that I'm trying to do political art but make it nuanced and emotional, and you know, my mission at the end of the day, I think if I had to put it into words, is I feel that the United States at this moment is suffering from a mass contraction of the heart. And so what I try to do with my art is use my art to tap into people's hearts and expand it. And so when I don't see that happening in the way that I want, or as quickly that I want, or as on a massive scale as I want it to do, I can be very hard on myself. And that doesn't obviously help in any sort of way. So I think women need to be gentle on themselves on so many levels, but also because I feel that we're healing throughout our lives. And to heal, it takes time. And so I think we need to be patient and gentle with ourselves.
Beautiful, thank you. So Meredith, you have talked about here and in the past in other interviews, talking about using this platform that we have to do good out there in the world, and you've started working with the ACLU. So would you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Sure. So I connected with the ACLU because I wanted to, I'm in service of my life in many ways, but not anything big, charitable, public, whatever. And I wanted to connect with an organization, and I felt like in this current political time, I wanted to work with an organization that I felt like was a bit of a checks and balances, where there was a lack of checks and balances in our government, particularly when the House was majority Republican. So I started working with them and just seeing starting the conversation about what is the most impactful and meaningful way that fashion can give back to the ACLU, an organization that we are all currently relying on, even though you might not realize it as you're sitting here, but we are all relying on them to fight for our rights as citizens of this country. So we're really still exploring what that's all gonna look like. And I know, there have been so many cultural movements just in the last few years, and fashion has shown up for those cultural movements in some ways that I think we could do a little bit more. I love a good slogan t-shirt, but I'm wondering if there's more that we can do and what that looks like and what that is. No hate on that idea, but just looking for bigger opportunities of how we can really show our support, or at least people that are interested can show their support for the ACLU.
Thank you for saying that. That's a great segue. I'm going to ask the panel one more question and then open it up to the floor so you can get your questions ready. What I wanted to find out is how do we take, which I think is part of what you're saying, Meredith, how do we take what's happening in this moment that we're all very aware of, very involved in, whether it's a record number of women being elected or seeking political office, women finding their voices to talk about being assaulted, or women just talking about what they want for their lives, and a record number of women, the rate of women entering into small businesses exploding. How can we take all of this and make it sustainable? What can we do to make it sustainable, speaking of us here and everyone here in this room? Anyone want to start off?
I'll say something briefly. I think the way in which we make it sustainable is that it actually has to last beyond the Donald Trump administration, which I firmly believe will be 4 years. Praise Jesus, hallelujah, inshallah, Allah, all of it. That means that, yes, we're in a moment right now where being political is fashionable, literally, but also figuratively. Like, people want to be involved, and we have more people involved than we've had in a really long time, which is incredible. I applaud that. I think that's great. But what we don't want it to be is we don't want feminism to be a fad. We want feminism to be a cultural shift that lasts for my son's generation and his children's generation, should he want children. And I think that that's what's important, so that when we commit to this moment in time, we are committing literally for our lives. And I know that seems very dramatic, but I think that that's the only way in which we create real radical shifts in policy and also in culture. And I think all of us in this room, whether we're artists, fashion designers, influencers, whatever that word means, like, we have the ability to influence and change things. And I think that we need to take that responsibility seriously. And I think that is how we get to the place where we're all making impact.
Thank you. Meredith?
It's a good question. Ditto. Like, I don't really know what else to say. Yeah, in addition, I think there's so many things. And I think, although there's a path forward, there are things we don't know about that path and how things will develop and what movements will happen and what movements won't happen. What I've seen and what I've learned being around political types is that using your platform is great. Using your voice is great. If you have that, you should do it. You should do whatever you can. Use your talents towards whatever you feel compelled to use them towards. But I also think the great equalizer is our right to vote. And there really is, it's kind of like, for me, the alpha and the omega. It's the one thing that we all have, if it's, not circumvented by other parties, but the one thing that we all have that we can use. So I think kind of what you're saying, like with the midterm elections, we saw greater participation, and it's just finding a way within yourself and within your small communities and your friends to understand that voting is your right and your responsibility, and like every time you don't vote, you're leaving your life up to someone else. So I think as we pass this midterm election and we go into how many other, our next president, our next administration, it's important that we all keep showing up to vote.
Thank you. Carly, how can we keep this going?
I think just going back on what you were saying about it not just being a moment, and I think people often get they adopt a movement for a moment and then it falls by the wayside. And I think you can still be who you are, you can still do the things that you love and still support a movement at the same time. And I think people feel like they have to do one or the other. And for me, I was disappointed during the Me Too movement at the Golden Globes, when, everyone wore black and everyone looked amazing, but they couldn't say, I stand with Me Too and I'm also wearing Dior. And it's like I can't be a beautiful woman and look amazing and act amazing and do all these great things and support this political movement. And I thought that was just such a shame, to be able to, these women have such a platform, and there's been blood and sweat in creating these beautiful looks for them, and then just for that moment they are supporting Me Too, and then it goes right back to, if you can be who you are, talk about the fashion, talk about your movie, talk about everything that you have been doing, and also talk about where you stand politically and what you're fighting for, then I feel like it will be long-lasting. They don't need to be separated.
Great, thank you. Okay, I have a question about how we're going to handle the Q&A. Should I just call upon people? Okay, yes. So in the middle here, yes. With a nice turban, with a bow.
Here, let's get you on the mic so it's recorded. Thank you. I have my own crown and jewelry line. I write, I paint, I do a lot of artistic things. I'm very obsessed with the idea of using the art to open up the hearts of people and bringing people together and promoting wisdom and growth through art. I have my own line, so I have to have a business at the same time. So my question to you all is...
And what's the name of your line?
Oh, Palais Apim.
Because we're just supportive like that.
Yes, thank you. Instagram, REIGN Global, Reign Global. How do you balance the business side and your creative and purpose and artistic side? Because I feel like I'm learning still how to put my business hat on, and I'm still not comfortable with that, honestly. And I'm becoming comfortable with certain circumstances pushing me to be that way. But how do you keep and sustain the business hat as well as your purpose?
Okay, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Carly, you're going to start?
I think, well, you learn that very quickly once you need money, to be honest. But, for me, yes, fashion is an art form, but it's really about creating a product that is not, obviously it needs to satisfy you, but it needs to satisfy whoever your customer is. And I think, I definitely had struggles, especially years prior when I was, looking for an investor, and I think it was very difficult for investors to see myself as a designer and someone who ran a business, because I think for 7 years, my company was about 6 people. So, and we all did everything. Now I have a team of 17. So it's at the end of the day, you've really just got to follow your gut and do what's best, do what you think is best for yourself, because you don't want to take someone else's advice that you feel in your gut that you don't agree with, because you'll be kicking yourself afterwards. I think if you make mistakes, I think you can own your own mistakes and be like, okay, I learned. I'm not going to do this again. But I think if you go against your own advice or your own gut feelings, then you'll be much harder on yourself. This whole, running a business is very much a learning process, especially as the industry moves so quickly. But, business and creativity is so intertwined, and I don't And I think even if you find it hard separating that, I don't think that's necessarily a negative. I think that even if you make decisions out of emotion, I don't think that's a negative either. Sometimes emotional decisions are the right ones, because you know in your heart that that's what you believe in, and at least then you can go to sleep at night in good conscience that you did what you felt was best.
Thank you. Paolo, can you say one or two things on that topic? Because you're an artist, but you also have to think about the checks.
Yeah, I do. I have been able to live my life as an artist, though it's just been unstable and instable throughout the 10 years that I've been doing it. And so what I've done, I think, subconsciously, is work. I can do various things, as you were saying. Like I write, I direct. I don't act anymore, but I used to act. Now I'm like working in social media and advising people there. So it's just figuring out, at the end of the day, I know that I'm a storyteller, and then I have various revenue streams of how I can make money in order to be that storyteller that I want to be. And it's just persistence.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, well.
Oh, me. It's not on. Hello? Oh, never mind. Hi.
Oh,
Hi, my name is Ayana from Atlanta, singer-songwriter, in case you want a jingle or a hit.
we want the hit.
Yes, always, always. Me too. So, most of us will recognize that conventionally the fashion industry hasn't been one that has embraced diversity. As designers, stylists, artists, how do you use your platform to make sure that inclusivity and diversity is a part of that? And also, when adversity or discrimination even strikes you, what tactics do you use to denounce that?
Thank you. So, Meredith, could you talk about the aspect of you, from what you've seen, using our platform in fashion to promote diversity, if you kick that off?
Okay, I'll just say very briefly, I think one thing that really struck me, and I don't remember the award show it was, and I don't remember the name of the actress either, but she said something about inclusion...
Writer?
Yes, inclusion writer. And that really struck me as a really succinct thing. I am a white woman. I interact with people in fashion of all different races and backgrounds, but I will say that I find the fashion industry to be not diverse, and I find it to be frustrating, and I don't really want to be a part of it. So when I get asked to be on a project or to work with a company, I generally look at who else is on that project, who else is involved, what that group of people looks like, and then if there's a styling portion to it, who are we styling? What do all those people look like? I mean, I've had jobs where I've said, I don't want to do that job because it's just a bunch of white women, and I don't want to style a bunch of white women.
Isn't that being like racist against white women?
I don't, we could go into that, but I don't really believe in that concept.
So I'm going to piggyback on your question too. One of the things that we started just chatting a little bit about in preparation for bringing this to you is, do we believe that women are discriminated against in fashion? Do we believe that male designers have an easier time of it than female designers?
I'll just say, I think women are discriminated against in business, and I think fashion is a business. So, I mean, my significant other said to me one day, why is it all these men are designing clothes for women? He has no relationship to fashion. It was just a question like, I don't get it, And I was like, it's an interesting question. And I'm not saying that men shouldn't be designing for women. I just think it's an interesting conversation to have. And having the conversation doesn't mean I'm decided one way or another. It's just an interesting conversation.
Okay. Carly, what do you think about that, and more generally what the questioner asked?
Well, speaking specifically to your question, I think, and I've spoken about this, a number of times, especially recently, And I think, yes, there very much is discrimination against women in the industry. I think we're not looked at the same, especially as what I was just saying before in terms of being a designer and a business head of a company at the same time. And I think that, even in the way we're described or critiqued, our collections are critiqued not in the same way. Men tend to be described as geniuses and poetic and the fantasy of it all, whereas as women are practical and it's all this, it's this functional simplicity. It's just the way, it's just very less, it's far less romantic the way women have been criticized, and and I think, and even compared, I've felt personally as a designer that, if I, I have been very known for creating very body-fitting clothing, and we have to look like you to wear the clothing, and it's not about that at all. But a man does that, and it's genius. So it's a difficult thing to navigate sometimes, and I think it's important to continue to stand up for yourself and be an example and be a strong woman in that sense, in terms of representing your collection, because there is very few designers that are female that are heading up major companies. And I was talking to another stylist friend of mine, and she's just like, I know pretty much that pretty much all male designers have been asked to design for a house in Europe, whereas women are not. I don't know if it's just because they think we're all eventually going to become mothers, and then but we're just not thought of it the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, and then I was just thinking about her question as well.
Paola, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'm not in the fashion industry, but I do think it's important to talk about the second question that you asked, is when one faces discrimination, how do you deal with it? The times that it has happened in my life, I've been so shocked by it that my shock has silenced me. That I didn't know how to respond to it in that moment. I'm talking specifically like in professional circumstances. And then I beat myself up afterwards for not saying anything, because I was like, what? Like, how could I? What did I do? And then it's like this whole thing, because you feel bad because what they said. You're angry. You're mad at them. You're mad at the system. You're mad at yourself. It's just like messes up your whole day, your whole week. So I don't necessarily have like specific answers, except for the fact, again, like going back in this idea of being gentle on yourself if you do lose your voice in that moment. But I'm much more conscious of trying to not lose my voice in that moment. And this sounds silly, but it's true. Like, I have thought about how I would respond should certain things be said to me. Specifically, this is not in a professional environment, but I speak Spanish to my son. So when I saw that video about that dude in Midtown to the person that was speaking Spanish, did y'all remember that went viral? I went and danced salsa in front of his house because I was so mad at him. But there was a whole protest. It was quite fun. But I've thought about that a lot. What will I say to someone if they say something to me because I'm speaking Spanish to my son, right? So I think if we prepare ourselves as much as one can prepare yourself in that moment to say something, it's important for yourself, because you have a tool. Because I think the worst thing is being silenced, obviously, in those moments.
And I agree to prepare, to have something to say, and depending on the context, the circumstance, to say it, how am I going to say it? Respectfully, Or am I in a context and is it so egregious that this actually deserves a disrespectful answer from me? Like but being prepared in different circumstances to say something. Sometimes that saying is a question. Like, did you mean that? Just to heighten the person's perception, self-awareness of perhaps what you just said or did was quite offensive. Like, did you mean it this way? Did you mean it that way? And the second thing that I recommend that's been done, and I've used this too, is to really, again, go back to your team, right? Whoever, your girls are, your ride or die girls, or whoever that mentor is, to go to them and speak it through. Because there's also this burden we carry as women and as black women and as black men, Latina, and so on. You have this burden too of, well, is this person just AH, or they AH was not acceptable anyway, but they're also racist. You sort of have to carry around, unfortunately, we carry around that burden. And so you want to work that through and try to drop that burden so you're not constantly questioning, having to question what's happening. I think that's hard too. So I think we have time for one more question.
Hi everyone, I'm Fee Noel. Thank you guys for having this talk. And I guess all of you ladies, including you, Constance, can answer this question. You have a lot of admirers, each of you in your respective field, and I wanted to know, what would you tell your younger self now? And my second question is, with all the movements going on, the Me Too, a lot of women that have made it are now speaking out. But what do you say for people coming up who still want to break into this industry and not do it in such a way to ruffle feathers and still want to? So I guess you guys can all answer that for me.
Okay, I think partially, Fee, the second half of your question, I think I partially gave part of my answer already, like, what do you do to not ruffle feathers and so on. Yeah, you can't always cuss someone out, though they may deserve it, right? Sometimes you have to be diplomatic about it.
I think the important moment that we're at this time is to allow women to choose if and when they want to express what has happened to them, whether they want to do it in a way that is ruffling feathers or whether they want to do it in a way that's not ruffling feathers. I think that the power of this moment is that people are listening, and it's scary and to navigate those waters because oftentimes you do it on your own, or it feels as if you're on your own, though you're not. With regards to what I would say to my younger self, I don't know. Stop daddling on the internet and just get to fucking work, I guess.
Meredith, what would you say to your younger self? And how can you deal with, discrimination when it stares you in the face?
What would I say to I don't know. I'm going to pass on that question just because I don't know. I don't think anything I would have said to my younger self would have changed the trajectory of my life, to be honest, because lots of people said things to me when I was younger. Right. I didn't listen. The discrimination issue, like I said, I've qualified myself. You can look at me. I'm a white, Caucasian woman. And so, I feel privileged in that way. The discrimination I deal with, I think, to be totally honest, I don't work with a lot of, I work with more women, groups of women. That's just the way my life is unfolded. That seems to be what I'm drawn to. That seems to be where I can relate the best. So I tend to find strength and power in that.
Okay. Carly?
I'm not sure what I would have told my younger self either. I think that, as I said earlier, I think it was, I think you learn from the mistakes you make, and I am where I am today because of the choices I made, and I think that's great. I think it's that's part of who I am, and I think that's okay. I think it's important to be young and to be free and bold and do the things that you're supposed to when you're young, because you don't have the same guts. I think as you grow older and have mortgages and things like that. So I think but then switching to the diversity topic, I think that you can still, whether you want to ruffle feathers or whether you feel that you want to put your work out there in a way that doesn't ruffle feathers, I think that there's a lot of talk right now. There's a lot of voices. There's a lot of opinions, and there's a lot of activism and people speaking up, and that's amazing. But if you feel that you shouldn't have to feel that you have to be an activist in order to get your work out as well. You don't have to do both. You can have your own opinions and your own political views, and if you want to keep them to yourself, or share them amongst friends over dinner and vote and do those things, but you don't want to become an activist and be an artist, and then that's okay too. There's no one path that there's no right or wrong path. It's your own individual path. So for me, with dealing with diversity issues in the past, sometimes there have been times like you said as well, that yes, I've been taken aback and a little like, oh, why didn't I say that? And then there's sometimes I hadn't even noticed at first, and then later I'm like, wait, what did you say? And
I think we've been there.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, there's always going to be some asshole who's going to get in your way, whether it's about race or whether it's about something else altogether, and it's about dealing with it in the moment or brushing it off. If you just want to brush it off and ignore it and do you, that's okay too. It's all very individual. Nothing is wrong as long as you keep doing what's the right thing for you and putting out great work.
Wonderful. And I don't know, for what I would have told my younger self, I don't know if I would have told, my younger self, go left, go right, instead of, going east or west, like you're saying, I'm not sure. But what I do know I would have told my younger self was more internal, which I would tell my younger self, don't worry so much. It's all going to be okay. It'll all work out.
Oh, I might have told my younger self to maybe ask for more help. I think sometimes we forget that sometimes like people are really nice. Yeah. More often that and people are willing to help. You just ask someone, especially if it's a busy person, come prepared and just have your question and be focused on it. And so many people have been like, yeah, just shoot me an email and I will help you do this, or I'll give you this person's email to do that. And it's like, oh, why didn't I ask you like months ago? So I think, definitely ask for help, because people can always say no, and then so what? You move on and ask somebody else. So I think definitely ask for more help.
Thank you. I know there are more questions. I'm so sorry, but I'm getting the wrap-up sign, or I think I got the wrap-up sign like 5 minutes ago. But thank you all so much for coming out. I want to thank our fantastic panelists, Carly, Meredith, Paula. Just amazing sharing and empowerment, right, for today. Thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of Fashion Week, and thank you, IMG, for putting this on.